Hi, everyone. Welcome to the new normal. I'm your host, Lisa Davis, aka Litecoin Lisa. Today we have my dear friend, Dr. Reg McDaniel, joining us to talk about the plastic pollution epidemic that there is and all the problems that come along and how it affects you. So listen up, give us a like, share the video to get more information out there to everyone, and we'll be right back with Dr. Reg McDaniel. Welcome back, Dr. Reg. We are winding down summer, looking forward to Labor Day this weekend and time with the family. And I really am excited about this presentation that you have for us because we're all looking at getting healthier this year for sure.
Well, first, let me say that this artificial background of the bricks and a brick wall with no door and no window in it is kind of like for 39 years I've been hitting my head against a brick wall because just like I was oriented and indoctrinated with if you've got a health problem, conventional medicine basically says we got a drug for it. Well, I've been trying to get across that nutrition, that the nutrients are made in the plant kingdom, that lo and behold, the code that is in our chromosomes, the DNA of the nucleic acids, is a very powerful code that can take elements and nutrients that have absolutely no properties of life, that in cellular synthesis with this code, they're hooked together and behold, life comes. And that's what I've been trying to get across, that the first thing to do is to optimize nutrition, which I found out we have 7 medical schools in Texas. Not one of them have a course in nutrition for human physicians. However, down at Texas A&M, they have the lone veterinary school, and the curriculum is quite different because I found out that number one, in the veterinary school, they teach them for all animals, and the biochemistry of all animals, including human, have a lot in common. But you optimize nutrition before you get involved with any pharmaceutical drugs. And the reason they do that in veterinary school, because you can't make any money feeding chickens and sheep and goats and cattle expensive drugs. And unfortunately, you can make the most profitable and powerful companies on earth by getting an animal that doesn't have just an awful lot of hair on him to take as many of these pharmaceutical drugs as possible, but they're all man-made poisons.
Yep.
By a seriously flawed process are elevated to be prescription drugs. So we should optimize nutrition first. But I have expanded this effort to address common problems that are on people's mind, and some problems that maybe people are not aware of. And today we're talking about the problems of plastics. And it's a huge problem on planet Earth and a threat to all life. And I probably wouldn't be able to really address this subject as well as I think I can, because twice I was an extern for Dow Chemical Company at Freeport, Texas. And what we did there was to take liquids and gases, and with heat, pressure, catalysts, and rare earth metals, make plastics. And these plastics vary from your transparent, very thin material in the kitchen to put over different things to I was involved that you make very strong boxes to put batteries in and line them up on the trucks to put batteries, very strong plastic. So depending on what you hook together to hook these molecules together and the conditions, you make different kinds of plastics. But these long molecules that are polymerized, and polymerize means adding multiple molecules to make chains. That first thing we got to get involved with is that life on Earth comes from energy from the sun, that by photosynthesis, a very narrow band in the green spectrum of the light that comes from the sun hits chlorophyll that's in chloroplasts. And what goes on there is that carbon dioxide, which we breathe out and all animals do, and any kind of fermentation or deterioration develops carbon dioxide, that these carbons are hooked in chains. And remember, I was talking about chains hooked together in the plastic. Well, the chains from carbon dioxide are varying in length, and lo and behold, the skeleton of which amino acids, fatty acids, and carbohydrates are made are chains of carbons, just like this process we were doing with gases and liquids at Dow Chemical. But as they break down these long chains, they make little fragments of carbon. And in the life process of a metabolism of our cells, of a plant and human life and all animal life, it confuses the metabolism of the genes that utilize the amino acids, the fatty acids, the carbohydrates, and the phytochemicals from the plants to hook them together in cellular synthesis to make bioactive molecules that run the process of life. And that's why nutrition is so important, because if there's certain nutrients missing and the genes call for it, you'll get disabilities in your health or deviations from normal. But this process of these plastics degenerating all over planet Earth and in the oceans, we read that there are virtually islands of plastic out there that are trying to figure out what to do. And in fact, the plastic industry is working very hard trying to figure out ways to make plastics that were in 21% oxygen of our atmosphere, and with the sun coming down, will break down. But in this breaking down, and these little short chains of carbon get involved in the cells as they're trying to do the metabolic processes and confuse, I will call it, or confound the metabolic processes going on inside the cells. So with that, let's go to the first slide.
Absolutely. Just a little quick trivia. Went to a baby shower this weekend, and they said one of the questions was, how long does it take for a diaper to deteriorate? And it was over 500 years.
Yes.
That was shocking to me.
And this deterioration of these long chains make little small carbon fragments that are very much like the carbon skeleton that amino acids, fatty acids, and carbohydrates are made like. And fact is, in what we used at Dow Chemical was probably primarily from the oil industry, long carbons that are present in the petroleum that were liquid, that are the shorter ones, like the butane, protein, methane. Methane is only one carbon. Butane is two carbons. Propane is three carbons, and butane is four, and it goes all the way up to gasoline and oil. But all of these can break down and make these little carbon fragments that confuse the metabolism within living cells, whether it be plant cells or animal cells. And of course, we're part of the animal kingdom. So it's a problem of plastic pollution that scientists, in fact, there's a lot of deviations from normal health that nobody knows, and conventional medicine can't figure out what's causing this. And one of the things they think is possibly the confusion that goes on within the cells from these little fragments of carbon of various lengths that are very similar to the carbon of which the chain of which amino acids, fatty acids, and carbohydrates are made. So let's go to the next slide. Well, as I was telling you, if I hadn't been a extern in 56, 57 for a Dow Chemical Company, I don't think I would be able to tell you that we use gases and liquids or small molecules, and all of them have positive and negative charges, and we could hook them together, and that's called polymerization. And I don't know whether you ever thought about it or not, but each one of our cells, and there are trillions of cells in our body, but in cellular synthesis, each cell is like a little factory that has the capacity beyond anything humans have ever done in factory development to take these amino acids, fatty acids, carbohydrates, and other nutrient molecules and hook them together. So each cell is like a little micro miniature polymerization factory, depending on which of the 30,000 genes we're told to make different bioactive compounds to run the biochemistry of life. And so we have all these charges up and down these carbon shades, and this alters cell function. And of course, cell function, we've got cell membranes, and we got tissues, and we got freely circulating molecules, which includes the hormones, the albumin protein, and other like cytokines, cell activators that are bioactive molecules that get mixed together with these fragments that are breaking down from these carbon fragments that we put together to make plastics. Next slide, please.
Okay.
Now, one of the things that is very important is that every cell has mitochondria in it that produces adenosine triphosphate, which are essentially the battery type. It's not like the electricity we plug in on the wall, which is alternating current, but it's a more like a dry cell battery. But these molecules that are carry on the process of life, and one of the very important amino acids is cysteine. And it's important because it has a sulfur and a hydrogen hooked to the amino acid, and it's only present in cruciferous vegetables. And that's what gives cruciferous vegetables a kind of a bite. And you can't threaten children enough to get them to eat them, but in the United States, we do not tend to like broccoli and Brussels sprouts and turnips and cabbage like some societies do. But one of the nice things is that we produce a dietary supplement that we talk about on this program called New Eden, and we put cysteine in it to cover the fact that we don't tend to eat those kind of vegetables. And that cysteine is needed in every cell to make glutathione, which is a molecule that has this SH group that binds to the free radicals that the mitochondria produce. That those free radicals have a charge, and if they attach to membranes in the cell, they can alter the function of the membrane. If the free radicals attach to nucleic acids, it causes a mutation or a change in the information that's in that gene. And the worst type of mutation is that which is required to cause cancer.
Right.
Well, we found out that the active ingredient from the aloe plant increases the production of cysteine because there's two additional amino acids that are very common in our diet, but the low one is the cysteine. And also we have in the New Eden a bentonite clay that binds to toxic molecules that were developed at Texas A&M, and they got a World Health Organization award because it reduced the incidence of GI tract or colon cancer just by putting it into the diet. And of course, cherry powder also has the ability to bind to these free radicals that are produced inside the cell, and that even in our environment, there are sources of molecules like herbicides and pesticides that are develop free radicals, which are used to kill the insects or to kill the grass that you don't want to grow. Well, if it gets into the body, it causes havoc. And we also have in the dietary supplement rice bran, which binds to these free radicals. And of course, the plastic is making small particles that have charge. And these substances we've got above there listed bind to those little extremely small nanolized particles as the plastic breaks down and can confuse the metabolism. And I've just got a list of things there that are in the dietary supplement that we talk about, New Eden, to neutralize these nanoplastic particles that confuse the cellular metabolism. Next slide, please. Now, this is ethylene, which is something that's used in making plastics, because we very common say polyethylene, which is the most common plastic made. And you can see there's the two carbons that have the hydrogen on it, but if you would lengthen that carbon chain, you could get into the same skeleton of carbon molecule chains of amino acids or fatty acids, which are even longer. And in the biological thing, instead of just hydrogen there, you have oxygens and nitrogens and sometimes sulfur hooked onto the carbon chain to make the molecules of life. But there's a similarity with this chain of carbons that are hooked together to make the plastic by polymerization, by going with the ethylene gas. You have pressure and temperature and catalyst to cause those carbons to hook together and make longer chains. And of course, that's this ethylene gas is the number one monomer, we call them, to make the polymers of and the polymer means the long chains, and that this skeleton of the chain of carbons is just like those that are in that the amino acids are made of, and the fatty acids, and even the carbohydrates. And so this is trying to get into, and as you break it down, you get into different fragments that are shorter than the polyethylene, and this causes confusion in the metabolism inside the cells. Next slide, please. Now, this points out that one of the amino acids is methionine, and it's very important in producing the molecules of energy that are made in the mitochondria. And this is showing the process and steps that are going on inside the cell. And then you have this carbon chain of ethylene thrown in there, and it confuses where you see this organized process that the genes are carrying out. And this polyethylene chains of various lengths of carbon can look like methionine, but it doesn't have the nitrogens and the oxygens on it that are needed. And also another thing about ethylene gas is it's produced by flowering or blooming plants. So it's in nature, and it's easy for these little fragments of ethylene to confuse the metabolic processes that are going on in our cells under the control of the DNA. And this ethylene is biologically active. Plus prize. Next slide, please.
Yeah, this is so interesting. My son did a report on plants recently, and for homeschool, and he was talking about how plants talk to each other through electricity and chemicals.
Well, this is just a schematic to kind of show you how the plant is arranged, that the ethylene gas is brought in, and you have these engineering feats that causes the ethylene gas to hook to other ethylene molecules to make this carbon chain that you see to the right. But if you right quick, you should be able to see, like they're in the light blue-green there, that it can break down to, that's just the ethylene, but you put multiple ethylenes together, and that carbon in the center has charges, and these charges can confuse the metabolism, and that's what's happening. Is when it begins to break down and go back to shorter chains than the plastic it is in our environment, and they're such small particles. Because you've never seen the structure of an amino acid or of a fatty acid because they're so small. Well, these little plastic chains are small too. And what we need is that in the New Eden dietary supplement, we have molecules there from plant source that bind to these polyethylene fragments that break down from the plastic. So that's good to have this in your diet to counteract these nanoplastic particles that can confuse the metabolism within the cells. Next slide, please. Now, this gets into that starting in the 1950s, that they started making plastics. And as you noted, that it was in the 50s that I was at Dow Chemical Research Center where we were doing this, but it is increased annually up to 230-fold more plastic made now than was made in 1950. And plastic will break down to microscopic particles that are a millionth of the size of that's what nano means. And this is a threat to plants in the ocean, to algae, to animals, and in fact, all life on Earth, because this life is built around the carbon molecules from carbon dioxide, that it's the same carbon atom that's at the heart of the plastics. But they don't have the molecules added to them like oxygen and nitrogen and sulfur that the living cells have. All they have is just hydrogens there. And these little nano fragments loose in the water supply, in the ocean. Actually, being this small, they can actually even be in the air and picked up in the lungs and carried in the serum to confuse the cells. And the next slide, please. This is just a graph that was showing what it was starting in 1950, how the plastic industry has grown. As it said, gave you a figure there, 230 times the amount of the early thing. And this is incredible international trash in our city dumps, in our water supplies, in our creeks, our rivers, and in the ocean. And as we said, this is a threat to both plant and animal life of how to cope with this. And of course, one of the ways we're suggesting to cope with it is to have a very broad diet that has molecules in it that will bind to these nanoparticles and inactivate them so that they don't confuse the cell's metabolism. Next slide, please.
Oh my gosh.
Now, this is just one example of a canal in India, and that boat is almost frozen there in the lake because of the mass of plastic that is in this river. And this is not just one place, but it's present in developed countries because we have more plastic and can financially afford to buy more different types of plastics for convenience. The next slide, please. And this is a world projection, and the darkest areas is where the most plastic waste is per capita in the country. And of course, we have a lot in the United States, but we tend to, in the developed countries, as you can see, like in Europe and England, we send a lot of this plastic to third world countries as trash. And they go through it, see if they can find anything of value, but it's actually shipped to third world countries where people are living on less than $1 a day, and they have mountains of plastic trash. And this is illustrating that the developed countries consume and use the plastic and then ship the trash to third world countries. Next slide, please.
Terrible.
This is trying to get across when we talk about nanoparticles that we've got just a button there at the top. And as if you were looking at this, that you get down to the size of molecules at the far left-hand side that are too small even to see under a microscope. Halfway down there, you might use a magnifying glass, but these nanoparticles, you can't even detect them on electron microscopy. So we're talking about it's very small. For example, right there next to it, they've got the red cell or erythrocyte. It's about 6 millimeters in diameter. Well, a nanoparticle is a lot smaller than that. Next slide, please.
Okay.
And this being so small is why, because the metabolism is at the cellular and ion molecule level, and that's what these nanoparticles are. And there are 16,000 chemicals present in the different plastics. And they say that 4,200 of these particles are toxic. This is based on 3,600 studies that have been made worldwide trying to identify the nature of this problem. And of course, I've been emphasizing polyethylene because ethylene gas, fact is, you may be aware that they sing green bananas from the middle countries, South America and such, and they put them into warehouses and they put this ethylene gas in there to keep them from immediately ripening, and they reduce ethylene gas as it ripens the fruits. And so these nanoparticles are taken up by food that we eat. They can be in fluids that we drink, actually even breathe particles, and particularly wet, sweaty skin takes up more of these nanoparticles to be absorbed into our body than dry skin. And they find these nanoparticles in atherosclerotic plaques, and they are, in some countries, done research and papers that they think the increased number of premature births is that the metabolism inside the uterus gets confused, and so you have these low birth weight babies being born because the metabolism of the pregnancy is confused or altered, and this alters the function of endocrine glands, reproduction, the function of the brain. There's increased numbers of developmental children that are not growing and developing right, and they think that a part of this may be nanoparticles from plastics. And these plastics, by the charge on them, produce oxidative stress inside the cells. And oxidative stress is one of the things that lead to diseases such as diabetes, cancer, and Parkinson's disease, and Alzheimer's or dementia. Next slide, please. Well, what can we do about this? Well, one of the things that in society we're doing in this country is trying to get people to reduce the amount of plastics in the wrappers and foods that are present in the stores, in containers and utensils, bottles and bags, to go more to glass, which does not produce nanoparticles. And so there's a big effort to, particularly in your refrigerator, not to use plastic containers in the kitchen and to use glass vessels.
Or microwave, correct? You should never microwave in plastic.
That's the microwaving, that energy hitting the plastic releases these gases or these liquids that were used to make the polymer, the long chains. It breaks and produces nanoparticles in the microwave. There's actually legislation pending to ban single-use plastics, which is so frequent, it's so handy. Actually, if you dig into it, you'll find out that some of the plastic companies that make plastics have been getting tax benefits, and they're trying to stop tax benefits going to the plastic industry. And yet this is a problem because the plastic industry employs lots of people, and it's a very profitable type of business. Example that there in the United States, 50 plastic plants have been built since 2000, and they received over $9 billion in tax breaks and subsidies because of employing people and bringing local taxes and federal taxes from their profitability. So it causes a political pressure to support plastics, yet it's very deleterious to health. And the point of this is only 4% of the plastics in the United States is recycled. And you see this in some kind of porch material. They make boards and fences out of recycling plastics, and they're trying to increase and put subsidies in those that will recycle plastic rather than those that make plastic. But when you talk about an industry that is the sixth largest in the United States and has over 1 million employees that gives them work, you've got a political problem that drives more plastics being made. And yet it's well recognized that we need to figure out ways to either deteriorate the plastics and recycle them, which would be better to use in place of wood from fallen trees, but then again, there is the logging industry, and they don't want recycling of plastics to cut down on the amount of wood that we use and the people that have jobs in the forests. Next slide, please. Anyway, one of the things, many stores are doing this, and I can think of the Albertsons that I go to. They've got a big stand there of shopping bags to reduce these plastic bags that are being used every time you go out to check out your groceries in the store. And they are trying to encourage people to not put plastics in dishwashers or in microwave ovens. As Lisa has pointed out, microwave ovens release and start reversing some of this polymerization and releasing these nanoparticles. And again, they're trying to promote us to buy glass and metals, snack and food storage containers. They're trying to get, I don't know what beeswax cloth is. I'm sure it's something from the past that people used in the kitchen to cover objects that are in say, a metal container instead of a plastic roll that comes in a box. And again, is a source of nano things that they talking about using wool balls to dry sheets and clothes washers.
Yeah, to soften your clothes.
They add as plastic material to washing machines, and they're trying to get people to use cups that are made of ceramics or glass for coffee and water. That instead of having plastic straws and trash bags, to use paper straws. And I have seen some hemp straws that are interesting, and they are not plastic. And they're urging people to not throw out the windows alongside the road. Fact is, I was just noticing on the way to work today, underneath the underpass of Highway 360, there's just in the gutter there, just multiple plastic containers and types of material from covering of plastic containers that I was wondering how in the world you could get around to cleaning this up. And then if you clean it up, you just put it into the environment because we don't have ways to recycle it. I think that's the last slide.
Well,
do we have another one?
Let me check. There is one more. I have a question for you on that. I had heard about scientists developing like microbiomes or something that would go and eat the like oil spills, things like that, to break it down so that it's not a threat. Would something like that be possible for plastic as well?
I have read, and I'm afraid it's awfully slow and
Okay.
also slow in development, but they are trying to find organisms that will eat plastics and say turn them into carbon dioxide, which is not a toxic gas, but actually utilized in photosynthesis and can recycle in the life cycle. Well, one of the big problems that the plastic industry also, as a public relations effort, is funding public issues that are positive to the society to try to take the pressure off of them for making plastics that are causing problems. And there is you use the petroleum products that are used to make plastics. And so the efforts that are being made in the country to limit gasoline burning cars in the oil industry has an effect to limit the petroleum source to make plastics. So the Go Green movement is considered to be part of a effort to be anti-plastic. And as we've said time and time again, that they're trying to develop ways to handle food and make it available in the stores using less plastic, which you can see through, and it keeps things moist. And there's some good features of plastics, but unfortunately, they cause this problem in the cells
Right.
because of what they're made of. And the plastic industry keeps harping that they reduce bacterial contamination of food, and so there's better health and lifestyles, and that plastics make life better. So that's part of their public relations effort. So again, the nanoplastics are small carbon chain particles that they break down to, and that's what they're made from in the plastic plant. And these little carbon fragments interfere with the biochemistry and physiology, and they have charges on them which react with the activity of life in the cells and can be mistaken by the cell's organelles for amino acids or fatty acids or the carbohydrates. And some of them, the longer and bigger ones, act like hormones, interferons, and cell activators known as cellkines that modulate the function of cells. So this is an unsolved social, political, financial problem to the challenge to all our societies. But the United Nations and the world capitals are trying to figure out what to do. And of course, the industry tries to promote its health and convenience, and are doing research to try to make plastics recyclable or deteriorate in the sun and not make nanoparticles. So that's pretty much a unknown dimension of how just threatening these carbon chains of different lengths, breaking down of plastic that's going into the air, to the water, to everything that's present on our planet Earth, and interferes with the life processes.
But there is a solution. There are some solutions, and that was the section of your presentation when you talked about one alternative way to inactivate those chains or ethylene is to use New Eden so that it binds to the dangerous carbons that could hurt you.
Yes, optimizing a person's health is one way to counteract the potential damage, because you've got plenty of the nutrients like we add to New Eden, which are nutrient molecules that are low, missing, or avoided by choice, like with cruciferous vegetables, to give their DNA the proper nutrient molecules that are needed in cellular synthesis, so they don't go grabbing these nanoparticles and inserting them and altering the metabolism of our body and causing potentially new diseases that come from plastics.
That it's unnecessary that we have to go through all this, but thank you for bringing us some solutions and all the education that you bring. You guys can reach Dr. Reg McDaniel if you go to wellnessquest.org and use my link, it's in the description. It'll take you right to the website, and there's a place there where you can ask him questions when you create your order. We always advise at least the 6-month, you get 20% off if you put it on auto ship, and you receive a free probiotic for the month, for each month to take. So wonderful. I'm sorry.
Thank you for this opportunity to share this.
Absolutely. I love these.
I think
it's so great. So great to be able to bring education and information and solutions to people. So please give us a like, share the video, and check out New Eden at wellnessquest.org. Take care.